Hey, YouTube, and welcome back to a new video with Rams fan at YT. In today's video, as the behest of a few fan suggestions, I have gone ahead and predicted all of the games from Friday evening to the next, to the Thursday for the upcoming week. So we're going to start with the Friday night fixtures coming up, and we're going to go all the way around to the following midweek fixtures as well. Going down normally, it'll be from the Premier League down to the National League North-South. Obviously, the Premier League isn't occurring at the moment. So instead, we're going to be starting with the Championship and going down. Starting with the Friday night games, kicking it all off, we've got my beloved Derby County versus Blackburn Rovers. I've not been terribly convinced during pre-season at the moment. So I think it'll be a tough start until we get a new goalkeeper in Zetterstrom, who's due to be coming. So I think Blackburn Rovers 3, Derby County 1. But I'm hoping I'm wrong there. Also, in the Championship on Friday, we've got Preston North End versus Sheffield United. Obviously, Sheffield United just come down from the Premier League. They've made some shrewd acquisitions so far. So I'm going to go with a 2-0 win for Sheffield United. We'll be excited to see them back in the Championship and see what we can do this time round. Going down to League One on the Friday, we got Barnsley, who were in the playoffs last season, against newly promoted Mansfield Town. I actually think the momentum are with Mansfield. If you saw my League One predictions, you'd see that I put Mansfield in mid-table. So I think it'll be quite a close game, relatively speaking, because Mansfield coming in as a bit of an unknown quantity for a lot of the League One teams. So I'm going to go with a slender 1-0 win for Mansfield. And the League Two game that night on Friday is Derbyshire outfit Chesterfield versus Swindon Town. Swindon have had it difficult over recent seasons, and Chesterfield have just had an absolutely stunning season. So I'm going to go with a 2-1 Chesterfield win. Right, on to the Saturday matches. We've got Cardiff City versus Sunderland. I don't know why. I just have a feeling that Sunderland will edge this one, and I'm going to go with a 2-0 win to the Red and White Army. Hull City versus Bristol City. Probably two quite even teams on paper, I think. Hull City did slightly better last season. However, I think if you look at the changes that's gone on at that club, it's quite difficult to predict what's going to happen. So I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. Leeds United versus Portsmouth. Obviously, Leeds United failed in the playoffs last season in the Championship, whereas Portsmouth just came up from League One. Really tough test for Portsmouth in their return to the Championship after so many years. And I can't see Portsmouth winning this one. I think they'll make it difficult, but I don't think they'll win. So I'm going to go with a slender 1-0 to Leeds United. Middlesbrough versus Swansea City. Middlesbrough, always a tough nut to crack at home, with very good fans, and Swansea travelling a long way. Wouldn't be that easy to dominate possession as much as they probably want to this season. And so I do think Middlesbrough I'm going to do slightly better, and I'm going to go with a 2-0 win for Middlesbrough. Millwall versus Watford. Watford had quite a poor season last season for their standards, but Millwall weren't that much better either. Both were sort of in mid-table, and I think both will probably improve the season. For me, actually, I'm going to say that I think Millwall could be dark horses, but I'm not going to reveal too much because we've got a predictions video for the whole Championship coming up on Friday. So for me, I think Millwall are going to come into this with a 1-0. It would be a close, relatively boring game, but they're going to scrap it 1-0. On the other end of the stream, we've got Oxford United, who have just been promoted from the playoffs. We're very exciting in how they play. And we also have Norwich City, who grew into the season as it went along. I think this game's going to be really exciting. Both teams are really free-flowing, play some beautiful footballers at the time. but I'm going to go with Norwich City win 4-2 in the end. Quite a exciting game. Queen's Park Rangers versus West Bromwich Albion. Yep, I think Queen's Park Rangers did struggle in parts last season, and West Brom did quite well. But it's a new season, so ultimately all of that sort of goes out the window, and we'll see. I think it'll be a bit of a slow start for West Brom this season, but they'll grow into it. So I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw. Stoke City versus Coventry City. A bit of a West Midlands affair going on here. And for me, Coventry City have been tipped by a great many pundits to do really well this season, and I can see why. I don't think it'll be a massively dominant display by Coventry, but I do think Stoke will struggle this season as well. They have done over the last few seasons, certainly. I'm going to go Coventry City 1, Stoke City 0. On to League One, and we've got a affair which was, for many years, a championship mainstay. We got the second city of UK of Birmingham City versus Reading. Now, quite difficult to predict this. Both have made quite a lot of changes over recent years. But I do think Birmingham City, with some of the signings they have made this season, are going to win this. But it's going to be a close one, an exciting one. 3-2 Birmingham City. Bristol Rovers versus Northampton Town. I think most people could probably agree this is standard mid-table game in League One. So I don't think many people will be tuning in for it. I think Bristol Rovers will probably just edge it at the end of the day due to home advantage. We go with a 2-1 win for the Rovers. Yeah. Burton Albion versus Lincoln City. Lincoln City, I think, showed last season that they were some team that on their day they can win any match in this league, and I think they are going to do quite well this season, as you saw in my predictions, that I put them as the dark horses to go and get second place and get promoted, and I don't actually think that's a crazy shout. Burton, obviously, survival specialists, so will make it difficult, especially at home. But Lincoln will come in good force as well. I'm going to go with Lincoln City winning by a slender 1-0. Crawley Town versus Blackpool. Crawley getting promoted last season, maybe a bit too soon, some could argue, whereas Blackpool just missed out on the playoffs, but I have got them to win the league. So what am I going to go? Well, I'm not actually, contrary to what most of you think, I'm not going to go with Blackpool to win this match, because I think it'll take a few games to get into it, and Crawley have got that more winning momentum coming into it. So I'm going to go with a slender 1-0 to Crawley, especially since they're at home. Exeter City versus Rotherham United. Well, Rotherham always do well at this level, but Exeter have proved that they can compete in this league, certainly. And it's a long way for Rotherham fans to go. Exeter City is a really hard place to go because it's so far for so many fans. But I do think Rotherham United do have the team on paper of a good team. So I'm going to go with Rotherham 1, Exeter 0. Leyton Orient versus Bolton Wanderers. I think Bolton Wanderers were a little bit arrogant last season. I think that could be fair to say. And I think there will be a bit of disappointment still lingering on from last season, whereas Leyton Orient did a phenomenal job, realistically. I think 9th was where they finished last season. So obviously if they work from that position onwards, then they can definitely improve. So I'm going to go with Leyton Orient to win by 1-0, because I think the better of the fans' attitudes at the moment is probably with Leyton. Peterborough versus Huddersfield. Now, Huddersfield last season got relegated, but it was quite a spirited, combative performance. It wasn't dead and buried stuff, certainly. But Peterborough also bottled the playoffs. Both of them probably have a little bit of lingering doubts coming into it. So I think it's going to be a close affair. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw. Stevenage versus Shrewsbury Town. I think Shrewsbury haven't been great last season, and I think that will probably continue this season, whereas Stevenage were very good last season in large parts. Still think there could be an upper mid-table team. I'm going to go with a 2-0 win for Stevenage. Stockport County versus Cambridge United. Well, Cambridge had a real difficult slog last season. They did end up surviving, but it wasn't a pretty thing to see. Where Stockport County just had such a dominant display, winning the league last season. For me, I think that winning momentum with Stockport will get them this game, and they're going to win by 2-1. Wigan Athletic versus Charlton Athletic, the battle of the Athletics. Wigan did well last season, and Charlton didn't. And if you saw my predictions video, you'd see that I went with Wigan going into the playoffs and Charlton to be relegated. But that doesn't mean I'm going to predict every game that Charlton's going to lose and every game Wigan's going to win. Because actually, I think it's going to take time with Wigan to get the clicking just about right. I think they'll come into it very quickly, but not quite first game standard. And I think Charlton instead will win 3-2. But that's just because both of these teams at the moment have had a reset and we have no idea where any of them are at. Wrexham versus Wycombe Wanderers. Well, new boys in the League One, Wrexham, owned by Hollywood. I do think it's not going to be as easy as many say, and Wycombe is certainly a tough challenge early on. I don't think the greatest League One outfit this season, but I do still think Wycombe on paper are a team that anyone would worry about. But I don't think too much. I think this game's going to be pretty boring. 0-0 draw for me. Into League 2 we go. We've got AFC Wimbledon versus Colchester United. Now, Colchester struggled a lot last season, but I do think this season that they'll be slightly better coming into it. They've got some promising youngsters getting in. They did some really good recruitment. Do look at my League 2 predictions. AFC Wimbledon, however, also have been doing a bit more mediocre of late. It's a difficult one to predict because that Colchester form is still not great at the moment. I'm going to go with a very exciting game because an all hail to the wind with defence, and I'm going to go with 5-3 to Wimbledon. Very exciting game. Barrow versus Crewe Alexandra. Both of these teams were very upper end of League 2 last season, both sort of challenging towards the playoffs. But for me, there's one winner here, and it's going to be Crewe. Because for me, Crewe, if you look at them, just got a good team on paper. I'm going to go with a 3-1 win for Crewe. Cheltenham Town versus Newport County. Now, Newport have struggled over recent years, but Cheltenham got relegated last season. So I do think Cheltenham's woes haven't quite been put behind them yet. I do think it's difficult when you get relegated to get your head into a right frame. I do think they'll do better than some of the relegated clubs, mind you. But for now, I'm going to go with Newport 2, Cheltenham 0. Doncaster Rovers versus Accrington Stanley. Well, Doncaster, phenomenal team. We saw them in the playoffs. I don't think they'll be quite as well suited this season, but I don't think Accrington Stanley are going to pull up many trees either this season. So I'm going to go with the positivity to continue in South Yorkshire with a 4-0 win for the Doncaster Rovers. Fleetwood Town versus Grimsby Town. Grimsby comfortably survived in the end, but there wasn't much competition down there, and it could be a much more difficult time at the bottom of the league this season. But Fleetwood did get relegated last season. It's really difficult to predict this game because both were in quite poor form. But I'm going to go with Fleetwood Town to win it by 2-1, just because they experienced League One last year. Gillingham versus Carlisle United. Well, Carlisle were abysmal last season. I don't think that's being unkind. They were rolling over and getting slapped by so many teams. It was unreasonable. And I think Gillingham aren't any mugs. They've been in League 2 for a fair few seasons now. We're wanting to make a return. I do think Gillingham will win this with home ground advantage as well by a solitary goal to 0. Harrogate Town versus Bromley. League new boys Bromley, who got promoted last season in the playoffs, which was not what I entirely expected. And I don't think even many of the fan base were. So I'm not entirely sure how Bromley are going to do this season in terms of results wise. Obviously, I put a league position in the prediction video. But long term, I don't know. Harrogate, a long established League Two club now. I think it's going to be a close game, in all reality. I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. Milton Keynes Dons versus Bradford City. I predict MK Dons are going to win the league. They were so dominant in parts last season. It was unfortunate they didn't make it. Bradford, though, they aren't any mugs themselves. Got a good fan base and certainly is a team to watch out for. But at the moment, I'm going to go with Team MK to go and win this game 4-1 because I just think they're such a dominant side this year. Salford City versus Port Vale. Now, Port Vale haven't done well over recent seasons, whereas Salford City haven't either. Both have sort of fallen off a bit. I do think Salford City will do marginally better in this game, but not by much. Home advantage, really, a 1-0 win. Tranmere Rovers versus Notts County. If you saw my predictions, you would have seen that I put Notts County to be relegated. I don't think that's being unkind. I do think a lot of the changes of that club that they've experienced have negatively impacted them. And I do think Tranmere Rovers at home are a team to certainly compete against. And although they won't be dominant this season, they'll certainly be mid-table at the very least. So I'm going to go with Tranmere Rovers 4, Notts County 2. Very exciting game, though. Walsall versus Morecambe. We saw in glimpses last season what Walsall were all about. And we also saw the fall off of Morecambe in a weird way. And yeah, I just think for me, Walsall coming in with a bit more better style of play, a bit more aspiration. I think they're going to win 3-0. I think it's going to be a fairly comfortable game at the Bescott Stadium. On to the National League. We've got AFC Fylde versus Solihull Moors. AFC Fylde will probably want to be put up a fight for this season. They always want to plucky underdogs. And Solihull Moors will probably be wanting to get promotion after the bitter disappointment of 2 penalty shootout losses last season. However, it's a difficult game. Fylde will want to start the season well, as will Solihull, and both will coming in full cylinders firing, but I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw, nothing to split them in the end. Forest Green Rovers versus Aldershot Town. Well, Forest Green Rovers got relegated last season and weren't very good, all things considering, whereas Aldershot did reach the playoffs. However, I do think Forest Green are a team which there's certainly been some changes at the club recently, so that will probably kick some positivity back. Aldershot, while I think they are a good team, I don't think they're going to do amazingly well start of the season. We could see changes later, but I'm going to go Forest Green Rovers to win this game by 2-1. Aldrincham versus Woking. Now, I think Alty last season did overachieve a little. I think it was a phenomenal season, and I don't think it was sustainable. Whereas I think Woking last season did the opposite, in essence. It was a season which was one to forget for the Cardinals. And there are talks about administration. I don't think that's actually officially been confirmed yet, not that I've seen anyway. But the adversity galvanizes a team, as I will always say. So I'm going to go with Woking to win by only 1-0. Boston United versus Rochdale. Well, the Pilgrims are back in the National League, and I predicted them to go straight back down. Nothing to do with the fan base or the stadium or anything like that. I just think that it came a little bit unexpected. I wouldn't say early because I spent a lot of time in the National League North, but I think this season was particularly unexpected to be promoted. Whereas Rochdale are a solid outfit that knows how to get results. They've spent a season in this league now and will definitely be looking to do better this time round. So I'm going to go with a win for Rochdale by 2-1. Dagenham and Redbridge versus Wealdstone. Maybe a bit of a London rivalry. I'm not entirely too sure. I know they're opposite sides of London. I think Dagenham have really sort of stagnated over the last few seasons, but I don't think Wealdstone have done much better. Not much to split these two teams, but I do actually think Wealdstone will win by 2-0. Can't really justify it though. FC Halifax Town versus Barnet. Barnet are going to dominate this league. End of. Easy. 2-0 win to Barnet. Enough said. Even though Halifax are no mugs. Gateshead versus Ebbsfleet United. Well, I don't think Ebbsfleet were great last season, and Gateshead were, in a sense, a team that should have been in the playoffs but weren't because of their ground. And it's not even because their ground isn't good enough to be promoted. It's just because of the council. So I think Gateshead will do better do all right this season. I do think they'll fall off. At the moment, they've still got that positive energy from last season. It's just whether that continues or not. So first game of the season for Gateshead, I'm going to go with a 4-1 win. Maidenhead United versus Eastleigh. Both of these teams seem to finish in mid-table. I do think Maidenhead are going to do slightly better this season. I'm going to go with a 3-2 win for the team in Berkshire. Oldham Athletic versus Braintree Town. Braintree Town are back, and I don't think they're going to want to give away too many points this season. And so I think they're going to be quite rigid in defence. And I think Oldham, at the moment, they're a team which will having lofty aspirations, but I don't think are going to quite manage it. I think Braintree are going to come with a solid, resolute defence, and it's going to be a 0-0 draw. Southend United versus York City. York survived last season, did relatively well, and Southend United with their new owners, finally. But every single Southend fan will be grateful for that. But I do think it'll now be a bit of time for transition with Southend. Getting that squad ready to go into the Football League, probably the season afterwards. But I think it's come too early, and I think York are really positive at the moment. So I'm going to go with York winning by 1-0. Tamworth versus Sutton United. Sutton United relegated, Tamworth promoted. Well, we all know that Tamworth had a terrific, amazing defence last season. They weren't so sharp at shooting, but their defence was certainly something to write home about. Sutton United, pretty much the opposite story, had a pretty abysmal defence and quite a bad shooting record as well. So I do think the game is going to be a relatively boring one, and I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw. I'm sorry, guys, but that's just the way I see it going out. Yeovil Town versus Hartlepool United. Yeovil are back on their steady climb back up, but I don't think it will be an instant return, and I think it will be a difficult season for Yeovil. It's not an easy league, and certainly from the signs I've seen so far, it will probably be a relegation survival battle. Meanwhile, Hartlepool, they have got a great management team. They certainly got aspirations on paper to get to the playoffs. We'll see if they will, but I think they'll win this opening game of the season by 3-1. Down into the National League North, and we got the most exciting game of the season, maybe, as the first game of Brackley Town versus Scunthorpe United. Yeah, early doors, we're starting with some bangers here. I do think Brackley are a better team this season. I think Scunthorpe are going through the motions at the moment. I believe they've just got rid of their manager who took them to second, which is just completely baffling to me. I think Brackley are building on a sustainable picture and doing better and better season on season. So I'm going to go with Brackley Town to win by 2-0. Buxton versus Leamington. Well, Leamington had just been promoted from the Southern League, Premier Division Central. And they've been in this league for a lot. Buxton, though, have also adjusted to this league relatively well. I think it's one of them things where these teams probably equal on paper, so that's why I've gone with a 1-1 draw. Curzon Ashton versus Needham Market. Needham Market, I'm not entirely sure what to predict about coming into this season, having most of the opponents being new teams they're playing against. One of them is Curzon Ashton. Curzon Ashton are a mid-table team. They'll probably have quite a strong defence, but not much going forward. So I think Needham Market will struggle to get instant success. So I do think it will be a 0-0 draw. Darlington versus Kidderminster Harriers. Two clubs that historically were absolutely massive and both have fallen off. Kidderminster were relegated last season, whereas Darlington did quite poorly in the National League North. So it's quite difficult to tell on paper how well both of these teams are going to do coming into this season. Obviously, Phil Brown in charge of the Harriers is a good manager, but I don't think it's going to quite be his week. I think it's going to be a 0-0 draw. On to Hereford versus South Shields. South Shields really impressed me last season in large parts with their lovely attacking and possession fluid football. And I've not seen Hereford, but I have seen South Shields. I do think Hereford are always one of them teams that will be mid-table, where South Shields are looking like a team with aspirations. So I'm going to go with South Shields to win by a comfortable 3-0 away from home. Kingsland Town versus Warrington Town. I don't know particularly where Warrington are going to finish, probably about mid-table, I would imagine, whereas Kings Lynn were relegation battlers last season, but I think they're trying to close down on their defence a bit more and will try and prevent anything going ahead. Warrington, I don't think have got the greatest attacking impetus, but we'll see. I do think it will be another 0-0 draw. Marine versus Oxford City. Marine were promoted from the Northern Premier League. Oxford City were relegated. Oxford City are currently in the gutter in terms of form. We saw with Dover that it's quite dangerous to get back-to-back relegations. And Marine look like a team on fire at the moment. My one worry is with Marine is whether they will try to play as if they aren't the new boys, if you can get what I mean. You probably don't, but what I'm trying to say is that I don't think Marine will instantly start off an amazing foot. I think it will be a close 0-0 draw again. Pretty boring weekend for the National League North from what I'm predicting. But I do think Oxford are trying to focus on the defence. Peterborough Sports versus Chorley. Chorley, a great club in Lancashire, which always seems to finish in the playoffs, whereas Peterborough Sports probably aren't going to do that well this season. They may do. I can't remember where I actually put them in predictions. It was quite a while ago. But I think on today's balance of play, well, not today, but like this match's balance of play, I think Chorley are definitely the team on paper to win it. I'm going with a 3-1 win, fairly comfortable in the end. Radcliffe versus Scarborough Athletic. Radcliffe, the league's new boys from the Northern Premier League, and they were so dominant winning the league last season. I think look at the Greater Manchester region, and they're home to some great clubs, and I do think Radcliffe can definitely build on that sort of enthusiasm within the Northwest. Scarborough, however, are did very well last season. I think it was about 8th. They finished, or maybe that's why I put them in predictions wise. Anyway, they did quite well last season towards the upper end of mid-table, towards the playoff promotions for a lot of it. So I think Scarborough this game will just win, even though both are quite positive. A 1-0 win to Scarborough Athletic. Rushall Olympic versus Farsley Celtic. Rushall Olympic are probably going to be relegated, let's be honest. But arguably, some people will probably say that Farsley will as well. So it's probably a game which is already being dubbed by some maybe as a 6-pointer, with both of these teams probably going to end up towards relegation zone towards the end of the season. I do think Farsley are slightly better on paper though, so I'm going to go with Farsley Celtic to win 2-0. Southport versus Alfreton Town. Obviously, what happened with Southport and them children recently is absolutely sickening, and I wholeheartedly support all the parents of the victims, and that they are given the time to grieve, and that the community seems to really come together. I know that Southport Football Club actually opened up their venue for some sporting activities for the youth of Southport, and I am appalled by the behaviour of these far-right thugs going up and abusing both Southport's community, which is already grieving, but so many other towns across the country. It's not appropriate, and my voice will be added to probably millions across this country already that this is not acceptable in any way, and it makes me upset and it makes me angry that people think it's an acceptable thing to use a few children's killing to justify burning places down, destroying buildings, robbing shops. It's not appropriate, and you will be punished. Anyway, on to this game. Southport versus Alfreton. Southport didn't do that well last season, in all honesty. And Alfreton did quite a good job. They reached the playoffs as per usual. So I do think Alfreton will win this season. Well, not win this season, but win this game rather, by 3-2. There are some positive signs coming out of Southport, but Alfreton is just too much for them. Spennymoor Town versus Chester. Both of these teams probably have aspirations for playoffs. Chester maybe even for the title from some people I've heard. But I don't think it will be the case that Chester will get to playoffs. I think that's what I said. But I certainly don't think they'll win the league. Spennymoor, I do think will get playoffs. And I think this will be a very close game, actually. I think it'll be a one-apiece draw. A good, exciting game in Spenny. Boreham Wood versus Bath City. Boreham Wood have just had a poor season, and I don't think it'll be an immediate return. Bath City obviously did quite well last season. They finished in the playoffs, I believe. So I certainly think Bath are the team on paper to win this occasion. So I have gone with that, with a 2-1 win for Bath. Chippenham Town versus Farnborough. Probably both of these teams will finish somewhere in mid-table this season. So it's a simple game, but I'm going to go with a Chippenham 2-1 win. Eastbourne Borough versus Chesham United. Not really sure what to make of Chesham coming into this season. Obviously getting promoted from last year's, was it the Southern League South or was it the Isthmian League? I can't remember. But they're the new boys, and they're up against Eastbourne, which is quite an established National League South team by this point. However, I think Chesham won't be any mugs, and I think it will be a 0-0 draw. It'll be close and cagey affair throughout. Hampton and Richmond Borough versus Hornchurch. Yeah, Hampton and Richmond Borough, again, long time in this league here, but they seem to have been drifting recently. Like a ship out at shore. We're not really sure where they're going. Hornchurch, however, had a really positive season, and I think they can do some bits, I would say, this season, but maybe that is a bit too youth slang. I do think it'll be a close game. I think it's going to be 2-2. Both teams really wanting the game. Hemel Hempstead Town versus Salisbury. Salisbury, in their previous iteration, spent so much time in the Conference South and in the Conference itself, and so the fans know what this league's about. Whereas Hemel Hempstead, they're no mugs either. They've been around for a while, but I do think if you look at last season, they did very poor. I think coming into it, Hemel Hempstead will try and just defend. Try and get as many clean sheets as possible. So I do think it'll be a 0-0 draw, but I don't think it's something we particularly want to see. Slough Town versus Chelmsford City. Chelmsford last season really pushed, but I think Slough are also a team which will know that Chelmsford will be coming there looking for 3 points, and also probably sit back quite deep, trying to hit on the counter. I don't think we can get any goals either way. I think it'll be a 0-0 draw, but I do think it's one of the things that it could be anyone's game at the end of it. St Albans City versus Maidstone United. We can't forget Maidstone's amazing FA Cup run last year, but I do think the loss in the playoffs will have a bit of a negative impact. And St Albans, they also did a very good job last season as well. Can't forget that they also finished in the playoffs. So I think it'll be a close game and it's going to be an exciting game. I'm going to go St Albans 3, Maidstone 2. Tunbridge Angels versus Weymouth. Weymouth have been quite poor recently, and I think they're probably looking over their shoulder towards relegation. Whereas Tunbridge haven't been that much greater, but they've been a bit more mid-table-y. I'm going to go with Tunbridge to win this occasion by 2-1. Torquay United versus New Boys Enfield Town. Torquay obviously just coming back out of administration. Neil Warnock as the sort of custodial charge of footballing, sort of. I don't really know what his role entirely is. Yeah, I think it's not. So I've heard some Torquay fans say, and there was one in the comment section of my predictions that, oh, Torquay obviously going to get promoted. What you're talking about? Well, I think no, because it'll be a bit of a transition season. And although Enfield Town haven't been in the conference, their cross rivals club Enfield FC, who now play at Bishop Stortford, I believe, are going to spend many years in this league, and I imagine most of the fans for Enfield Town were fans of Enfield at the time. I think therefore that Enfield Town will do slightly against expectations in this game and win by 1-0. Truro City versus Dorking Wanderers. Dorking just got relegated, so they'll be trying to get back probably the first time I'm asking, but it's quite difficult. Truro's a tricky place to go, and I don't think Truro are going to pull up any trees either this season. I think a bit more mid-table, although I have seen a prediction which have got them towards playoffs. I'm not so convinced myself. I'm going to go with a 0-0 draw myself because I can't see either team drawing a goal out of it. Welling United versus Aveley. Well, Welling wasn't great last season, whereas Aveley was certainly a team which I think everybody loved Aveley by the end of the season. They did really well in the league and they reached the playoffs, and I was sort of hoping for them to win it actually. But no, I think they'll keep that gusto and small dog mentality coming in, and I think Aveley will win this 3-1. Weston-super-Mare versus Worthing. Well, Weston-super-Mare are at home, and they do have a very good home form. And I think it's one of them teams that have made a good deal of acquisitions of late. And Worthing will probably be a bit hungover from that playoff final defeat. It's always difficult to get that out of your mind. So I do think Weston-super-Mare will come with a dominant psychology coming into it and win 4-0. Not to say that Worthing will get battered every single week, of course not. But I do think until they acknowledge the woes of last season, they can't move on from it. On to the Sunday games, we've got Luton Town versus Burnley. Obviously, a Premier League occasion last season. Both teams getting relegated. Luton Town showing slightly more gust, but I do think Burnley now with Scott Parker in charge of the club, it's certainly going to probably go a different direction. So I'm going to go with Burnley to win this game by 2-1. But it'll be a close game. Carlo, onto the EFL Cup. Actually, before we go on to the EFL Cup games, if you are new around here, please do subscribe and put your predictions in the comment section down below. I think I might create a mini league, 3 points for the exact score correct, and 1 point if you get the result, whether it's a draw, loss, or win, sort of right. Ben Squirrel, glad to see you here. Upper Needham winning the league. I did predict Needham to win the league, and I think Needham are going to be the real dark horses this season. I've got a lot of Needham support right now. Maybe I should go and visit Needham at some point. It's a bit of a trek for me, to be fair. But it'd be lovely to see Needham at some point in the future, maybe in a few years' time when I'm going and becoming a successful YouTuber, and I can go and see a bit more further afield non-league games. But I do think Needham are certainly a team at the moment which are going places. So on to the EFL Cup action, and I love a bit of EFL Cup action myself. It's a shame how it's devalued over years, but if you look, you've got the likes of Oxford's, and you've got your, I think it was it Swansea? I think it was Swansea in 2012. You've got, well, the list goes on, but there's so many clubs in there which have unexpectedly won it, and that's certainly one of the good things about this cup. So the first one, we got Carlisle United versus Stoke City. Actually, I don't think Stoke are going to field their strongest team this game. I don't see why they would. They probably want to be focusing on survival this season. Carlisle instead will be the home team looking to pull off the upset, and will probably want a cheeky EFL Cup run themselves. So I think Carlisle are going to come into this wanting a win and win by 3-0 because Stoke are just going to field youngsters. Stockport County versus Blackburn Rovers. A classical mismatch for Stockport, having been promoted, having won, as I said, the opening game of the season. I think it's going to be a fantastic 0-0 draw. No, I think Blackburn will probably field a slightly youthful team, but not so much so that Stockport will be able to get past it. Who do I think will win on penalty shootouts? Well, I'm going to go with Blackburn Rovers to win on penalties. I'm sorry, Stockport. But I think when it comes to a spot for an upset, it's quite difficult for the lower league outfit to win the penalty shootout. Leyton Orient versus Newport County. Now, Leyton probably want to do quite well in the league, but I think they will focus slightly on the cup. I don't think they'll play a weakened squad as such. I do think Newport will come, and they are a cup specialist. Let's not forget the amount of times that Newport have gone on some crazy run in the FA or EFL Cup. So I'm going to go for that reason. Newport County 2, Leyton Orient 1. Portsmouth versus Millwall. Obviously, this season that'll be a championship occasion, but I do think that Millwall are probably slightly better team on paper than Portsmouth. I think Portsmouth will be focusing on the league to try and survive. I think Millwall not necessarily will want an EFL Cup run, but I think they will probably end up getting one so far, because I'm going to go with them winning by 1-0. Salford City versus Doncaster Rovers. Well, this is just a League Two occasion, a bit boring, and I think both teams don't really want to win it, so I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw, and on the penalty shootout, I'm going to go with Salford City to win it. Preston North End versus Sunderland, a championship occasion, and I don't think either of these sides will be too bothered with going on a cup run. Probably, I don't think either of them are either aspirational to avoid relegation or to get promoted, but I do think it'll be one of them ones that neither particularly see it as a good competition to go far in the EFL Cup, which is my opinion. So I think I'm going to see Preston North End winning this by 2-1. Northampton Town versus Wycombe Wanderers. Well, Wycombe will want to, I think, more maybe than Northampton, not by much. I think Wycombe will want to have a good tie because they always like a good run in the cups themselves. Northampton, though, will come looking for a result as well. I just think it'll be a 1-0 Wycombe, but that game could really go either way. Bristol City versus Coventry City. Well, we know that Coventry did win the FA Cup last season, but I don't know about this. I think the focus from a lot of the fans have been on, we don't care about a cup run this season. We want promotion. I don't know if that's the exact words people have used to Coventry fans, but it certainly seems to be more of a focus have shifted towards we want to finish in the playoffs. So I think Bristol City, who don't have them aspirations and think we'll just be content with midfield, when we're talking about mid-table, will probably want a cup run to sort of lighten up the mood a bit. So I think Bristol City 1, Coventry City 0. Close game though. Rotherham United versus Crewe Alexandria. Crewe Alexandria will be certainly a bit disappointed not to get a bit more of a tasty tie, but I think Rotherham is still an all right fixture. But I do think Crewe will come looking for a result, but Rotherham will be quite tough to break down. I'm going to go with a 1-1 draw, but I'm going to go with Rotherham to win on penalties, home advantage and all that. Cardiff City versus Bristol Rovers. For Bristol versus Cardiff derby. Oh wait, no, that's for Bristol City. Anyhow, the Severn Bridge derby 2.0 is happening in midweek next week. And I think the Bluebirds probably will be quite dominant this game. I think Cardiff will probably want something to lighten up the mood of the club at the moment. They're quite have not had the greatest last few years, a bit midfield, a bit drifty. So a good cup run will put some smile on the fans' faces. So I'm going to go 3-1 to Cardiff City. Huddersfield Town versus Morecambe. Yeah, I think Huddersfield need to bring positivity back to this club. So they need to win every single game that they possibly can, because otherwise the negativity will seep in. And even if it's against Morecambe, a win is a win. So I'm going to go with Huddersfield to win this dominantly 3-0. I'm sorry, Morecambe fans. Charlton Athletic versus Birmingham City. Historically a championship occasion, of course. I think Birmingham City on paper are just a better squad. And I think Charlton will be more focused on probably survival, whereas Birmingham are probably more focused on promotion. But I do think Birmingham will win this by 1-0. But I don't think either will particularly want to win it. Wigan Athletic versus Barnsley. Well, Barnsley on paper should win this game. They're certainly a better outfit last season-wise, but Wigan aren't any mugs either. It's tough. I'm going to go with Barnsley to win 2-0. I think that'll be a good result, and we'll save them through to the next round. Watford versus Milton Keynes Dons. Oh, this is a rivalry, surely. Just they don't play each other that often, but I do think Milton Keynes will certainly be coming to Watford to look for the upset, and I don't think Watford could care less. I think Watford will probably be focusing on wanting to get back into that playoff picture after a blip last season, and I think MK Dons are coming looking for a scrap. So, and because how well they did last season, the momentum's with MK Dons to win 2-0. What a prediction. Barrow versus Port Vale. For me, Port Vale are probably a team which will be wanting to do well in something this season. So I think, why not the EFL Cup? Barrow still probably looking towards them playoffs in one way. So I'm going to go with Port Vale 2, Barrow 1. Burton Albion versus Blackpool. Well, let's get this over and done with. Burton Albion, absolute EFL Cup specialists, it seems. Do you remember when they reached the semi-final and lost against Man City? I think it was 10-1 on aggregate after losing 9-0 in the first leg. It's quite embarrassing, really. But I do think Burton are going to win this one against Blackpool. We're in the same league, but I think Burton will want it slightly more because they wanted to get one of them runs again. They always want that high profile and TV televised encounter. So I'm going to go 1-0 Burton. Swansea City versus Gillingham. I think Swansea City don't have much to play for this season. I think if you look at their track record of recent seasons, they've been a bit in mid-table. And I think, therefore, they'll be focusing on one of the cups. So I don't think they'll play a weakened side and be quite dominant. So I'm going to go 4-1 Swansea against Gillingham. I'm sorry. Grimsby Town versus Bradford City. Well, both of these teams on paper, they're both League 2. Neither of which will probably have wanted this tie in the first place. Probably close game. I'm going to go with 1-1, and I'm going to go with Bradford City to win on penalties. Tranmere Rovers versus Accrington Stanley. Accrington Stanley? Who are they? Exactly. Well, I think Tranmere will probably come into this game home ground, home support, always a bit better. So I think 2-0 to Tranmere. Fleetwood Town versus West Bromwich Albion. difficult place to go, Fleetwood. I think it's Highbury, is it? Stadium is when the wind blows on a Tuesday night, it's somewhere else to play. It's a very difficult game to go to. I think if West Brom are going to be in for a difficult game, it's not going to be a rollover, and I think they will probably be focused a bit more on the league campaign, maybe, because they'll probably want to replicate that playoff finish from last season. So I'm going to go with Fleetwood scrapping a 0-0 draw, only for West Brom to win on penalties. Cambridge United versus Queen's Park Rangers. I think Queen's Park Rangers will be focusing on trying to stay in the Championship this season. Cambridge probably focused on staying in League One, but I think Cambridge wouldn't mind having an EFL Cup run themselves, bringing in a bit extra added revenue and a bit better overall in terms of investment. So I think they're more likely to be wanting biting the cherry at this point. So I'm going to go Cambridge United 2, Queen's Park Rangers 1. Walsall versus Exeter City. Exeter City in League One, and I think both of these teams will probably be wanting to go for it. And just because of Exeter's added quality that they've got, they'll win 2-0. Shrewsbury Town versus Notts County. Similar occasion. I think both Notts County and Shrewsbury will be wanting a run in this competition. But again, Shrewsbury in the league above, I'm going to have to go with a slender 1-0 win for the Shrews. Colchester United versus Reading. Well, I think Colchester were quite poor last season, and I don't know if they'll necessarily want an EFL Cup run, instead focus on the league campaign. I think Reading have concealed themselves that they're probably not going to do that well this season, so may as well have a cup run. So I think we're going to go with Reading 1 at Colchester 0. Crawley Town versus Swindon Town. Well, Crawley got promoted last season, and Swindon did pretty abject. And I think Crawley will want something to look back on at the end of the season. I think because they know they're not going to do well, and I think Crawley have currently got momentum though, and I think if they try and continue that, it'll be good. So Crawley Town 3, Swindon 1. Oxford United versus Peterborough United. Well, it's the rerun of the playoffs from last season. With Oxford now in the Championship, though, I think they're probably slight edge favourites to win. And I think they're going to. I think they're going to win by a slender goal to 0. I don't think there'll be much in it, with both teams wanting a run. Lincoln City versus Harrogate Town. Yeah, I think Lincoln are going to be a team to really dominate this league in League One, and I think they'll also want to have a good runs in the Cup. And I think coming up against Harrogate, they're not going to treat them as if they're some low league opposition just to turn over. I think they're going to go in and all guns blazing, and it's going to be a really exciting 4-0 dominant display from the Imps. On to the 100th game I'm predicting this. There's a lot of games doing this sort of thing, so I do hope you enjoy it. Is Norwich City versus Stevenage. Now, Norwich coming into this, they had a bit of a good, strong end to this season last season, and Stevenage did quite well as well. I think Norwich will be wanting to try and create a successful bounce to take them onto that next step. So I think they are going to win this, and I think they're going to win it 3-1. Derby County versus Chesterfield. Right, we're going to ignore the pre-season games because pre-season doesn't mean anything in the end, because you play pre-seasons to find out strategy. Now, I know the EFL Cup, some managers use it to field strategy, but I think Derby will be wanting to, after losing the first game of the season, as I said, we want to try and get on a good footing and make sure it's not too bad and doesn't end up a slaughter fest. So they're going to want some positivity at the club. And so I think they're going to get that by winning 2-0 against Derbyshire rivals. Do we dare say that? They don't play each other that often, but yeah, they are quite close to each other as well. Bromley versus Wimbledon. Now, surely this is going to be a rivalry this season coming up. The South Londoners. And both teams will probably be wanting this quite well. Bromley coming into the EFL Cup for the first time ever, so they will be wanting a result. AFC Wimbledon, however, in this situation a few times, and will also probably want to have a bit of a cup for themselves, having not had one for a fair few years now. I'm going to go AFC Wimbledon to win on penalties after a 2-2 draw. Bolton Wanderers versus Mansfield Town. As I say, the momentum is with Mansfield, as I did in my first prediction, whereas Bolton are a bit more arrogant. And they may be so coming into this game, playing a slightly weaker squad. But I do think, in terms of the overall, it's going to be a draw. It's going to be 1-1 between the two, and Bolton Wanderers to win on penalties. Sheffield United versus Wrexham. Well, I think Sheffield United are far and away obviously going to dominate this game. I think they'll be wanting some early successes to mount some positivity back to Bramall Lane after such a negative season last time. And what better to do than playing against a team of Wrexham, and everyone will be like, oh, we want Wrexham to win. So I think Sheffield United will win 3-1. I think, yeah. Hull City versus Sheffield Wednesday. Bit of a Yorkshire rivalry, maybe. I think Hull City will be maybe wanting this a bit more than Wednesday, just because Wednesday will probably be focusing on survival. So I think Hull City will win this by 4-2. Plymouth Argyle versus Cheltenham Town, both in the southwest, and I think both of them will probably want to go for this. Plymouth, Wayne Rooney wants to make a positive impact, and he did an all right job in cup competitions. He wasn't worse, so I do think, in terms of if he can get a result against Cheltenham, it might be able to get the bogies off his back. However, I think Cheltenham will also come looking for a scrap. So I do think a 1-1 draw. And I think Plymouth will win on penalties, but it'll be a close one. Leeds United versus Middlesbrough. Well, I think at Ellen Road will always have a load of fans no matter what the occasion. I think that does definitely give them an advantage. And although both will probably be having an eye on playoffs, maybe promotion automatically for Leeds, I think for me, it's got to be Leeds to win this by 3-2. Well, there are all the fixtures. Please leave yours in the comments down below. That would be hugely appreciated. I'd love to set up this thing as a sort of mini league with people. I hope the people who requested this are happy that I'm doing it. It's a lot of effort, a lot of speaking. And the championship predictions will be coming out on Friday. I'm going to go on holiday for a few weeks, so I'm going to make sure these prediction videos, both the results ones and the Premier League ones, are already pre-recorded and uploaded for the relevant times, and you'll see it come up on your page. So if you turn on the notification bell when you subscribe, because please do subscribe, that would be hugely helpful. Then you'll be able to get them when it comes up. With 3 subscribers away from my target for September. We got 3 weeks left of August, and I'd love for them 3 subscribers, one for each week, so we can get to that magical 150 by September. But that would make my summer all the better. But thank you for Ben Squirrel for his interaction in today's stream, and I'll see you all in the next video.